Mr. A here, saying, how y'all doing?
Yo! Are you ready to rumble? Or should I say tumble? Cause I don't stumble or fumble like a cracker frying combo. Standing on the ground, flat feet firm, killing worms and germs, and I'm doing it on my terms.
Welcome to the Rumble. We are back and better than ever, helping you stay ready so you don't have to get ready. We don't want you sucker punch, so we're here each and every week helping you keep your guard up. I am Jeremy Lavelle with Remedy Claims Consulting at Claims Coach on Instagram and TikTok, and they just call me the mouth of the South. And alongside of me is the Catastrophe Queen and the Claims Dame, Miss Jessica Odell, and the whimsically well-adjusted and the wonderfully well-rounded, the one, the only Baby Cakes, Miss Donna Lavelle. Well, how's everybody doing today now that we know Baby Cakes is self-confessed, well-rounded?
Yeah.
The cutie with the booty.
Hi.
There we go. Man, it is by the time you're going to hear this, we will have gone and come back from RoofCon, but the preparations of getting there are crazy, you know. I would like to let everybody know that I was on an inspection yesterday, Saturday, and I got bit by a dog. True story. Got bit by a dog on the foot. An English bulldog, no less.
I don't like English bulldogs.
Well, they evidently don't like me. That's for sure. So, do we have any fun facts with Baby Cakes?
We do. Fun Facts with Baby Cakes is brought to you by Inc., the best way to get paid after an insurance claim. Inc. Save time, get paid.
Awesome.
Was that good?
That was great. Yeah, there we go.
Okay, let's see. Thanks
to the boys over there at Inc.
Did you guys know that there's a thing called a beefalo?
Oh, a beefalo?
Is it anything like a turducken?
No.
No? Oh, okay.
It's a cow and a bison hybrid.
So yeah, it'd be kind of like what'd you call it? A turducken? Turkey duck.
Turducken. That's actually a dish.
The cow's not inside the bison.
Well, it depends on. I guess the bison would be inside the cow.
Well, that's how they made it, I guess.
Is it a bull and a female bison, or can you go either way?
I have no idea. But you can buy its meat in 21 states.
You can buy its meat in 21. Is Texas or Kansas or...
I don't know.
You didn't get the 21 states?
No.
Check back for a full list of states where you can get a beefalo.
Yes, probably get a beefalo burger.
I do like buffalo. I mean, if you've ever gone to one of those,
buffalo chili.
Yeah, I really like buffalo. It's got a really good flavor. I like it a lot. I remember back when I was a kid, they were actually an endangered species.
Buffalo. Now they're attacking people from California.
They're attacking people from California.
Interestingly
enough, here's a fun little fact. If I can add to it, are you gonna do the fun fact about buffaloes and storms? Because if you are,
you can go ahead and do that one.
Are you gonna do it?
You can. I forgot what it was.
Okay, so when a storm is coming, cows will run away from the storm. They'll try to outrun the storm, but a buffalo runs into the storm because it figures the quickest way to get through it is to run into it and get on the other side of it as quick as possible.
Did they tell you that? The cow or the buffalo? How do you know that?
Well, it was an extensive interview process.
It was in a mood.
You know what I mean? And 4 out of 5 buffalo agree.
Okay.
That's what they do.
Then it must be true.
We're just waiting for the 5th one to cave.
Okay. So the Terminator script was sold for $1.
The Terminator script was sold for $1. It's like that True Romance script that Quentin Tarantino did, but the Terminator script was sold for $1.
James Cameron sold it in order to make his big break.
Awesome.
And as we all know, James Cameron was he did Titanic and what's that other one? Avatar.
He also did Terminator 2, which basically changed the world of special effects, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm. James Cameron doesn't do what James Cameron does for James Cameron. James Cameron does what James Cameron does because he is James Cameron.
That's kind of like Chuck Norris.
I was waiting for that.
Yeah.
A punchline like Norris.
Yeah. You know that Superman wears Chuck Norris pajamas to bed, right?
What? How do you know that? Where's the punchline?
That's the punchline. Superman wears Chuck Norris pajamas to
Right,
bed.
not the other way around.
Oh. Okay. I don't know what I was thinking.
Yeah, neither does anybody else.
Yes. Did you know that Captain Crunch's full name is Horatio Magellan Crunch?
I bet that was a bitch in kindergarten.
Yeah. And his ship was called the SS Guppy.
His ship was... I didn't realize he even had a ship.
Yeah, that's why he's a captain.
Well, I understand his rank is a captain. Okay.
Well, you have to have a ship to be a captain.
No, you don't.
You be a captain in the military.
No. You can be a captain in the military.
Oh, well, he has a ship.
Okay.
He's the real deal.
Guppy.
If he was going to be a skipper,
He's got stripes.
a
too.
skipper would actually be somebody that is in charge of a ship or a baseball team.
Oh,
Or a baseball
that's-
team.
There you go. That's the colloquial term for a manager of a baseball team. And I would like to point out that the Texas Rangers are your World Series champions of 2023. Big shout out to the Rangers there. Way to go, guys. Way to bring it home.
now you know, and knowing is half the bullshit.
Knowing is half the bullshit. Thank you so much, Baby Cakes, for Fun Facts by Baby Cakes, brought to you by Inc. Guys, we have got a really cool show today. We're going to be talking all things strategy and how we figure out what to do with the claim once it comes in. I'm going to remind you that this comes to you in 3 separate rounds. When you hear this sound, you know that the round has begun. And when you hear this sound, you know that the round is over. Guys, I want to remind you that Jessa and I are merely commentate on it. It is you that is in the Rumble, and we're hoping that we're helping you get through all of this all of the stuff that we deal with. And I know it can be really confusing when claims come in once you've got a claim. So it's really, I've got a claim. So now what do I do with it? How do I know what to do with it? And we're going to get into that in 3 separate rounds, guys. I'm looking forward to round number 1 because it starts right after this. Public adjusters, listen up. It's Jeremy Lavelle, owner of Remedy Claims Consulting, host of The Rumble, and most importantly, your claims coach. Public adjuster training is one of the hardest things to find. Sure, you can take some online seminars, you can show up to conferences, but none of them tailor training just for you until now. Whether you need to learn how to estimate, scope, negotiate, or prospect, I can help you drill down on the skills you want to develop. Maybe you're just starting out and you need to learn the claims process from A to Z, or you're just wanting help on strategy on a specific claim. I can help you find the traction you are looking for and learn how to truly control the narrative in the ever-changing world of claims. You can reach out to me directly at 888-596-8772, or you can find me on the web at remedyclaims.com and just click Get Started. That's 888-596-8772 or remedyclaims.com and click Get Started. You can even shoot me an email at jeremy@remedyclaims.com. That's JEROMY@remedyclaims.com. It's time to move your career to the next level. Round 1, supplementation. I literally almost forgot to ring the bell. Like, I knew what the round was. I always forget the round, and I almost, golly, man, I just can't get it right. I'm struggling. Supplementation. So I'm going to kind of give you guys a window into like how I address claims. And at Remedy Claims, basically, we always kind of say we handle claims based on its merit. Okay, so when you look at a claim, I'm going to do one of 4 things. I'm going to look at it and go, there's nothing I can do. This claim has been addressed, coverage is open, and I may just want to supplement it, which is what we're going to be talking about in round 1. Or I may want to fully represent the claim and sign them as a client and act as a PA on a claim. And there is an outside chance that kind of based on what I'm looking at, I may just push that claim straight into appraisal. And it just sort of depends on what's going on. And we're going to be talking about the differences and kind of the nuances so that you can tell which one is which. But for this round, we're going to be talking about supplementation. But first, Jess, is that kind of the thing that you do? You sort of look at it and figure out the best way to go. I know we were kind of talking off air about it a little bit, but that's kind of how I handle things.
Yeah, it's kind of like a triage. I'm very curious, interested in your supplementation part, because up until now, anytime that I have worked claims on my own and not necessarily with a firm, a PA firm, But anytime I've worked a claim on my own, I kind of triaged into whether it's a PA file or more of a just go straight to appraisal file. So I'm actually very interested in what you mean by supplementation. This ought to be really good. But yes, I absolutely, I'm not one of those people that just signs up as a PA. And although there's benefit to it, sure, documenting it from day one as if there's potential to go to legal so that the file is documented the entire process, the entire way. But I think if you handle yourself professionally enough, even during the appraisal process, that documentation can still, if bad faith is present, can still be used if it needed to go to legal. So either way, I'm working files and documenting everything to a T, crossing the T's, dotting the I's, all that good stuff. What do you mean by supplementation?
Well, what do I mean by that's a really good question, and I think a lot of that comes out of when we first started Remedy Claims as a PA firm. I think supplementation was a service that we offered. I was really comfortable with it because that's how I got into it. So whether you're a contractor or you're an estimate writer or you're or you're a PA, sometimes we're looking at when we want to move into when we want to involve anything. Cause I think it's interesting to know that generally once you've picked a lane, you've got to pretty much stay in that lane. You can't jump. Like, for example, if you're the PA, being the appraiser on it in most states is not something that you can do. You have to assign it to an unbiased party. And as a public adjuster, you would absolutely be a biased party. Again, check your policy to make sure. But on occasion, now it's not so common now where supplementation is something that I can push it into. But let me give you an example. Let's say we had a storm and the carrier came out and they agreed that the full roof needed to be replaced. Okay. And we're not really arguing about the full roof needing to be replaced. And possibly, we had some siding damage and they're replacing the siding. But most of the time, what you see is while you may have had a very conscientious adjuster that's out there, they missed some very crucial line items.
Right.
They may have missed the flashing. They may have missed, and we've got clear documentation for it. There's clearly a desire to extend coverage for the loss. They're not really arguing that there's a loss. There's good documentation. I also know that a lot of carriers just didn't want to replace flashing because they felt like it could be or should be reused. And I'm not getting into the arguments and the finer points of what we would supplement. But most of the time you can come in and say, hey, I believe because the coverage is available, there's no real coverage dispute. There's no real scope dispute. There's just some missing line items. And so when we're looking at those missing line items, that is a file that is primed to just be supplemented. So if you're a public adjuster, one of the things that you can counsel your contractors or your homeowners is go, look, we just need to submit a supplement and it's probably going to be fine. And so I am careful about entering that arena much anymore because I like to maintain a level of autonomy and detachment until they really need a public adjuster or an appraiser. You know what I mean? So I will just say, hey, let's get together, the invoices and the items that you want to do, and let's submit that to a carrier. And I think one of the cool things about a supplement is there's so much that you don't really need. You need a couple of photos. And you just need, an invoice and an estimated cost on it so it can come on, like a QuickBooks, bid form. It doesn't even have to be put into Xactimate, and so supplementations are very easy. Whereas I would write, much more intricate supplements back when I was just roofs are kind of covered differently this day, these days, because at one point in time, they would always tell you that the ridge and the waist the ridge and the starter was already included in the waist. They would never write for ridge and starter. And they would just say, hey, no, that's part of the waist. And that's not exactly true. Right. And especially as shingle manufacturers decided that there is a specific product that they use that is not, it's not, because ridge shingles often were cut out of 3-tab shingles. You know what I mean? And they would use the waist to create the they would use the cut waste basically to create the ridge shingles. So when they were using only like 2/3 of the shingle, they would save that cut waste as ridge shingles when they needed it, and so it was kind of there. But that's really not how roofs are put on anymore. Pretty much with the they're moving away from, they're moving away from the 25-year shingle pretty much altogether, because most of what you see roofers install these days are 30-year shingles. I'm not saying that there's not a use for a 25-year shingle. You certainly see it down in the coastal areas, like in Florida and Louisiana. You'll see, and even Mississippi and Alabama, they're still putting a lot of 3-tab shingles up there. And you also see 3-tabs on lower slope roofs too, because the drainage with a laminate shingle on something that's below like a 312 or whatever gets a little sticky. So I'm not saying it's completely out of the ordinary. It's not completely gone, but most of the time these guys are installing and even giving free upgrades for that 30-year shingle. So that's when I use a supplement. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so and Jess, if you think about a water loss, because you are the water queen, I'm telling you what, guys, if you've got a question about a water loss, you need to hit Jess up on Facebook. I'm not going to give you her phone number, but hit Jess up on Facebook. She would probably not take your call because it gets just a little bit.
You're too busy calling her.
Well, yeah. I mean,
no, look,
my calls are more important.
I do not know what it is about water losses. I can't take credit. I've just gone to some really good schools. I have friends in the mitigation industry. Now I'm actually, COO to a construction company, mitigation company. It is just something about water losses. It is water travels in the craziest patterns. It doesn't just stop where you think it stops. You really have to be investigative. You almost have to be a sociopath. I think I'm fit for the job. So and somehow, by the grace of God, I applied to be on the census board for the rewrite of the S500. So there is a PA voice on that board as the S500, which is the Water Restoration Technician Manual. Right, that's the manual that governs more or less water losses and how they're handled. That has been a very eye-opening experience. I definitely recommend that anybody out there to really, take yourself into the next level of professional, get outside your comfort zone, get involved in something like that. The professionals that I've just met through that alone has just really elevated where I was. And it's not, I can't take credit for any of it. They're just amazing people out there, and you just got to get into you got to be where they're at, and find them. And there are some very, very cerebral people. I say all that to say, I don't know what it is. It became an obsession, a niche, a thing. If I don't know the answer, and there's still a good chance I don't know the answer, I will find it because it is a love. I don't know what it is.
Well, I mean, and some common items like within water losses, and you correct me if I'm wrong. One of the things, the fact that there is this actual standard that is not building code, because when we're talking about exterior losses, everybody jumps to the IRC, and whatever authority that we're under. But the S500 within the IICRC is the most widely accepted standard. Yes. Do you know what I mean? For how these, how the water is mitigated and remediated from it, and how and it's also pretty clear on how it's to be documented. Yep. Do you know what I'm saying? And that's one of the things that I really like about water losses is that there is this predetermined standard that exists on how they get handled. You know what I mean? And so these water losses, especially your smaller isolated incident, and what I mean by that is like the water heater that happens to be in the garage that leaks into the master closet kind of thing. You know what I mean? Writing a good solid claim or a good solid estimate without representation that you're fairly certain it's just going to be extended. I mean, there's not a lot of question here. Water came into the closet, the carpet's messed up. You know what I mean? And and so we're going to replace that carpet or we're going to clean that carpet, kind of depending on what we're looking at here. You know what I mean? If the bottom of that pan has been discovered to be rusted out and the water's got rust in it, at that point in time, that changes the category of water, what it flows through, because I have seen water heaters in outside closets, depending on what region of the country you're in, and it comes from an exterior place. And what happens to the category of water when it comes from outside the house to inside the house? What happens to the category of water, Jess?
It automatically jumps up to a 3.
It automatically jumps up to a 3. And by and large,
it's in the manual. We don't make it up. It's in the manual.
Yeah, you're not. Yeah, and so that is, it gets classified as a category 3 water loss, and how that, and then what you do with the things that water touched becomes the standard. So it's not me that wants to replace the carpet or the tile or whatever. It's the standard that dictates it. And so when you have these water losses, sometimes it's just about asserting the standard, because if there's coverage, it's asserting the standard and saying this is what it needs to be. And so a supplement is a reasonable thing to send in based on the standard alone, because all of these decisions have been made, all of these standards have been agreed upon, and this is what we're going to do. And I would like to point out that when it comes to the IICRC S500, and the director at one point in time made this point, and I thought this was great. These are the minimum standards.
Yep.
This is what, at the very least, this should be done. That doesn't mean that in some cases that you're going to have to do more. But as we are classifying water losses, interior water losses, it's at least going to be this. But depending on the loss, it could be more. You may have to do more in certain situations.
Yep.
But
and I think maybe that's why I have such an affinity for it too, is, when you come from a military background, yes, you get training. Yes, you become, experienced over time, but always having a reference to go back to and say, look, I made my decision. I based my analysis on a manual that was put together by a lot of people that have extensively more experience than I have. There's, I guess, an element of trust that you have that to fall back on versus some of the other losses, or fire losses. I think they're now coming out with a fire one, an S whatever manual. And
I'm very interested in that.
And they're coming out with a commercial water loss one too, because they recognize the S500 is perfect for average residential. It doesn't address the types of materials and things and situations you would find in some of the larger commercial settings. So they are expanding their manuals. So, and a fire one is coming out.
I'm personally thankful that we have them.
Amen.
Do you know what I mean? Because, and do you remember, if you go back and you listen to some of our other shows, do you remember we talked about third-party unbiased documentation? Right. Do you remember when I talked about that? This is documentation that existed prior to the loss. How this gets handled, classified, or looked at was determined prior to this loss even occurring, because we've seen this so much, we already know how it's supposed to be handled. So the IICRC S500, when it comes to water losses, are exactly what it should be. So, anyway, what I was saying is that is great third-party unbiased documentation. I lost my train of thought. There was something very specific that I wanted to say to kind of wrap up that round. But I'm going to go ahead and do that. And that's one of the things that I do really like about water losses is that, in a lot of cases, you're going to run into all we need to do is just basically turn in an estimate. I know that you have to go against, is it Code Blue? Is that the one that's doing audits for carriers now? I can't remember the name of the company, but they hire a third-party company to basically audit mitigation estimates. And I think it's really funny because I want to let every one of y'all know that anything that third-party person does, that is not an actual representative of the claim, that is not a signed representative of the claim, which would be somebody that would determine causation, coverage, and payment, okay, that individual has really no place in the claim, number one. Number two, they have no authority over the claim. And number three, anything they say would and be considered extra contractual. Now, I'm not going to take away their expertise on it, but that's the thing, is that they are not the hard and fast answer on it. And the same goes for engineers. And
I was gonna say the same thing.
It's the same thing with engineers. Most of these times, these guys are, all they're giving you is their opinion. And so remember that when you're looking at these items, not everything needs, both barrels. Sometimes just the simple, hey, this is our evaluation of the loss. And remember, it's our job to determine what we're claiming and how much that loss is worth. So sometimes supplementation is a very key tool, and it's often the first step before we make decisions on the other two. So that'll be the end of round one on supplementation. Guys, remember to drop your questions or any comments that you may have in down below. And we look forward to hearing it. And we're going to get into the next round right after this.
One of the most difficult claims you can work is a contents claim. It requires extreme detail and significant documentation. Ricky McGregor with Monarch Claim Services is the expert you need on your side. She will handle on-site evaluation, inventory, photo documentation, pricing, and overall contents claim organization. She will work with your team beginning to end so you can focus on the rest of the claim. Do your client a favor and call Ricky McGregor with Monarch Claim Services. You can reach her at 515-783-1434. That's 515-783-1434, or find her on the web at monarchclaimservices.com.
Round two, representation. I would always call this, round two, representation. I can't do anything right today. Not at all.
It's like you're having a case of the Mondays or something.
That's it. I'm going to start throwing things and screaming and quitting. Yeah, I quit this job about 3 times a day. No, seriously. Representation. Again, within my meritocracy, I have 3 different things, 3 different ways that I classify or triage a claim. Am I going to supplement it? Am I going to PA it? Or am I going to appraise it? And what we're going to talk about here is the representation or the public adjusting of a claim. I want to be clear. You're adjusting a claim.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And so if it requires an adjustment, and have you ever, just kind of speak to me, have you ever gotten an estimate from a carrier, or a homeowner calls you up, or a contractor calls you up, and they hand you the estimate or the scope from the carrier, and you're like wondering, did they even look at the same loss that we're looking at? Because it appears that the individual has no clue either how to use Xactimate or Symbility. They have no organization to their file. They're just completely lost. And you basically got to take that scope and pitch it in the trash and estimate it like nobody's looked at it. You've got to assess it and look at, even though you kind of should do that all the time. I do often use the carrier scope just kind of as a canary in the coal mine, if you will, to kind of figure out where they're at. But I've looked at some estimates like, I have no idea what you're looking at. And I had one of those recently. So I actually had one of those very recently. So
same. It was a water loss. And I mean, they had damage they ripped up the whole master bedroom floor and everything, all new flooring on there. I was like, the master bedroom is not even near the source of the water leak. What are you doing? And are we even in the same house? What?
Well, or my favorite is sometimes, there's that. And then their complete lack of knowledge, especially I'm going to stick with the water loss theme here, because I think that a lot of times the carrier adjuster thinks there is some discretion when classifying water. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? There's some, and a lot of times these mitigation companies come in and they do a really good job of cleaning it up, and it doesn't look damaged, or for lack of a better word, I think what I'd like to say is contaminated. I think that's really the word that I'm looking at, is that some of the building materials that we're looking at, the tile, the bathtub, I've had one guy that said, well, sewage water touched the outside of my toilet. And I'm like, look, buddy, I understand that you want everything replaced and the idea of everything new, but do you understand what we put in the toilet like every day? Yeah. And the thought that it can't be cleaned is just a ridiculous thought altogether, you know? So those are items. There's certain items that I do believe that even in a category 3 situation can be cleaned, but most commonly anything that's porous, any sort of porous, anything that you can't get in there and clean, grout, tile, especially travertine tile, that stuff's got to go. It's just got to go. And there's a standard there that supports it, right? And sometimes you're looking at this and they have no idea and they're not extending coverage for it and they just don't even notice that it's damaged. I've seen tile go completely unaddressed on a water loss, Jess. Completely unaddressed. And the interesting thing is you can't take it to appraisal. If it's unaddressed and it's not been brought into coverage, you can't take it to appraisal. So that is a lot of things. And I'll get into this more in round 3 before we can take something to appraisal. If you don't have it in coverage and it's not been adjusted properly, it needs an adjuster, not an appraiser. And so if you're looking at a claim that needs an adjuster, then you're going to have to do a full representation, not a supplementer, right, not an appraiser. This claim needs to be adjusted. And that's the thing. And then that is going to basically inform your strategy, so to speak. Jess, I'm going to let you talk now because I'm just running off at the head, and she's kind of looking at me like, "Boy, you're just killing it."
Yeah, so. I mean, when you're on it, man, you're just. It fires me up. So I'm not going to interrupt that vibe. No, I think, especially when it comes to, like, I understand, and I guess we'll get more into it with appraisal. I understand that there's a way that PAs are handling certain claims out there, especially when it comes to Big Blue. I don't know. I guess I could say the name because I'm not bashing them. I'm just saying.
No, it's just a matter of fact.
So, you're not. Allstate. Yeah. Okay, so Allstate right now.
Carriers provide their own strategies. Yes. Sometimes we strategize against carriers, not against or with carriers based on how we know their guidelines are and how they behave. That's absolutely true.
I have just heard it from so many PAs across so many different states when it comes to Allstate that it's not a bashing. It just seems like this is the tactic or technique. And that is Allstate likes to try to handle their claims through the appraisal process. It just seems like no matter what, the immediate first response is, we're not moving, we're not budging. You can invoke appraisal if you want. I actually seen that in emails. You can feel free to invoke appraisal if you'd like, but it's so automatic. But where I struggle with that is, okay, got it. If it's just a dispute over cost, 100%. I think you should do triage your claim, perhaps go to appraisal. It's better. However, if they have only opened coverage on a few soft metals and some gutters and maybe one window screen from a hailstorm, but 0 shingles, is the roof surface appraisable? Is it kind of a breach of contract in and of itself, in that they've purposefully ignored a totally beat up roof? I mean, we're talking wind-blown shingles are missing. 2-3 inch hail struck the surface. It's these asphalt singles. So you've got the matting broken, you've got this dislodged, granules, everything. It's textbook roof replacement. And they're just saying, no, the roof looks like it's in good condition. You have got to be kidding me. What photo report are you looking at? Because you're not looking at the 180 page one that you got sent in, or the 78 page one, whatever.
Right.
What, and because the environment with appraisal is changing so much, you've got State Farm took it from a paragraph to 3 pages. So as a PA, when you're looking at triaging this, do I take this as a PA, or does this need to be more of an appraisal? I mean, it seems to be getting a little harder to delineate which path is better. Because I also feel like at some point, some of the carriers, especially where it's not binding in certain states, some of the carriers are just going to say, no, I don't want to pay the award. Well, then what?
Well, I've run into that, and I'm happy to get into that more into the appraisal round and kind of the things that you're running into when you get ready to appraise it. And that's why, when you don't have coverage opened on a shingle. Now, I am of the opinion. Okay. So this is my own opinion. I don't really have anything to back it up other than more than a decade of experience for whatever that is or isn't worth to you. I mean, you've got people that have been in the industry that we have access to, whether it's Tony Rugas, of Level the Playing Field, that I'm pretty sure, I think he worked Noah's flood claim. You've got all of these different people that are out there. So whether or not my decade of experience carries any weight with you, this is what I would say, is that when these soft metals are damaged, there is no way to address these soft metals without involving the shingle. Agreed. And let me be clear about this. I think it is very difficult to repair anything that involves shingles and achieve indemnity in any kind of way. Okay. And so while indemnity may not necessarily be 100% the goal of the carrier at the time that they sold the policy, because I have heard several attorneys lately, indemnity is not a word in there. Pre-loss condition is not a phrase that's in there. That's not necessarily what they owe for. You have to look at the contract to see what they owe for, and they reserve the right to repair or replace. One of the things that I think that the insurance policy should do or should not do is leave you in a worse position than you were prior to the loss after that they've performed their repairs. And I find that a lot of roof repairs can leave the roof in a more compromised state than it would have been if you'd have just left it alone after the storm. Now, that's I have seen that a lot. And especially when you're dealing with roofs that are north of 15 to 18 years old on a 30-year shingle, because making those repairs is going to cause more damage than what's there than if you just left it alone. Now and so when we get into that situation, and I'm not saying that repairability is always the argument that wins the day. You know what I mean? And in fact, I will tell you that I can't give you an argument that's going to win every time. But this is the idea. This is the point. These are arguments that you're going to have to go make in order to properly adjust this claim. And because and I think a lot of adjusting a claim and a lot of being a public adjuster on the claim simply boils down to this one thing. Now, our job is to prove the loss. And once you have offered what is called a preponderance of evidence towards causation of a covered peril without the absolute exculpatory evidence pointing to something else, then that loss should be covered. Okay? Appraisal is for the extent of it. Okay, but whereas when we're looking at the adjustment of this loss and you've offered the preponderance of evidence, essentially what you're doing is giving the carrier the opportunity to recognize the right thing to do in this situation. It is not your job to be an attorney. It is not your job to be the judge, jury, and executioner. All you're there to do is to give them the opportunity as a claims professional to do the right thing. And I've said time and time again, Jess, I was an IA. I write the same estimate that I've always written. I've learned a thing or two. I've learned the understanding of where some of these costs come in. And so my estimate, my base estimate has grown a little bit, but that's all based on experience and knowledge and understanding of how things get done. Right. But I write with the same attitude of indemnification that I've always written with. And so when we step in as public adjusters, this is not about sticking it to the carrier. This is about adjusting a loss. And when you look at it like that, it really removes the ego from the claim. And I want to tell you, part of the meritocracy here at Remedy Claims Consulting, whether we're supplementing, representing, or whether we're appraising, ego has no place in a claim ever. And the moment it becomes competitive, you've lost sight of what's going on. And so I want to encourage you guys, don't let it become competitive. I know that it can be frustrating. And when you've offered the opportunity to do the right thing and they belligerently do the wrong thing and choose to make that business decision that Jess and I have discussed ad nauseum, it gets really, really frustrating when they're only wanting to make business decisions. And it's like, and they basically stare you in the face and go, I know we're wrong, but so sue me. And that's just frustrating. Mm-hmm. That's just absolutely frustrating. And I get it. But again, your job is completed. You have completed your job. And so we've got to move on to the next thing and cut that thing loose and let somebody that can inflict the consequences and prosecute this claim to the full extent of the available coverage. You've got to hand the ball off and let them do that. And so that's my encouragement to you when you find yourself, once you have completed adjusting the claim, you should be done. That's just my thought. And I'm guilty of hanging on to claims way too long and being drug along. And so part of the craft is understand when you're kind of being led down a road and they're delaying, denying, and defending just for the sake of delaying, denying, and defending.
And that's,
it doesn't have anything to do with the right thing to do.
That's one thing I appreciate so much about what Cal Spoon teaches at his boot camp is, there are already statutory timelines. There are already timelines. Use them. If the carrier's working with you, I'm not saying still, send it to an attorney on day 31 if the statute's day 30 or 30 days. But, if you, especially over time, you know where a claim is going, how fast or how slow. Use the statutes. And just like you said, disconnect yourself from the emotion, disconnect yourself from the ego. Sometimes it's not ego. Sometimes it's just emotion. Like these people are suffering and you're being an asshole.
Yeah.
And that was mine.
Right.
It's not that I have an ego, but I do tend to empathize a lot with hurricane victims because that's been my biggest,
Sure. I think victim is a good word.
It is.
I think victim is the absolute word that we're looking at here. I think that's the point. And because I have dealt with victims of insurance losses and the carrier treats it, they tend to cloak the loss in their own humanity. Like when they look at the items that are owned and it's like, I can't believe anybody would spend that much money on it. So we're not going to cover it. It's sort of like, this doesn't have anything to do with you. And I'm telling you, I have had very knockdown dragouts with carriers, multiple. And by knockdown dragout, understand I'm not screaming at them on the phone or standing on anybody's desk here. I am reiterating my point over multiple conversations over and over and over again until they're frustrated enough that they want to get rid of me and actually volunteer their supervisor's name and information. And so there is a level of insistence sometimes when you're on the phone with some of these carriers where you begin to tell them it's like, you're going to have to do better. I told an adjuster one time, I said, this must be really tough for you, for them to have put you into a situation and in a claim that you have no idea what's going on and you've not been trained for. I'd be pretty angry too. So, the idea here is, and I don't want to just monopolize everything. The idea here is to make sure that if this claim needs to be adjusted, that's when you're going to want to represent it, is because when the adjustment is incomplete or
erroneous,
not even been attempted,
or that too,
what I mean? That's
not even been attempted. 4 months, no
not even really. There's been no real attempt at the adjustment of the claim. I'm actually working a claim right now where they basically said the wood floor was the wood floor is buckling up. And so, they're claiming water damage. The homeowner's claiming water damage and the floor is buckling up. And the adjuster came out and said it was due to improper installation. And you've got full slats that are buckling up on top of each other. You know what I mean? I'm talking like by 3 or 4 inches. And it's like, look, I've seen improper installation. And the carrier actually called out a leak detection company. They actually called out a leak detection company, and the company said, yeah, there's a hole in the siding. It's leaking down the wall and causing damage to the floor. Like their own expert said that, and they still stuck with their adjuster basically stating, you know what I mean? And you want to talk about a material misrepresentation of the loss. Right. There you go. That's it.
It's only improperly installed where the water was.
Yeah, right. Interestingly enough, the improper installation had to do with you didn't let it acclimate properly. You know what I'm saying? It's that kind of thing. You didn't let it acclimate properly, and the humidity in the room, and it's like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? It's
sudden
terrible.
And accidental is
Well, guys,
called sudden and accidental for a reason.
Right. And it's always a struggle. And guys, look, I get it. But don't be discouraged, and understand where your responsibility truly ends as an adjuster. You know what I mean? And don't take it personally, and certainly don't take it as a failure. Guys, we're going to start talking about appraisal in the final round of this episode. There's some key points that I really want to bring out in this one. Round 3 starts right after this. When choosing someone to help with your online marketing, make sure you go with someone that has years of experience. Our good friend Sally at Thrive has over 20 years of digital marketing experience. She can build you a beautiful 15-page, sleek, interactive website, post on your social media platforms multiple times a week. She can do a video, an amazing CRM to manage and maintain and nurture your clients, text, email marketing, review generation, a business listing on 60+ search engines, including 3 voice networks, appointment scheduling, estimates, invoices, payment processing, and more. She will also create for you on Google, a Facebook page, and Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. If you need these for your businesses, she'll help you create those pages on all of those sites. If you already have these pages, she'll optimize them for you as well. Call or message Sally today. If you want to get started, you can reach her at 214-789-1651. Again, her name is Sally Brigance. Her number is 214-789-1651. And you'll also get a landing page the day you sign up. When you send her a referral that signs up with her, she'll credit your billing account. Logos are also available, and she also offers a lead generation service and SEO, search engine optimization, where she can guarantee you to appear on the first page of Google or your money back. It is spelled THRYB, and you can find my good friend Sally Brigance, and that's spelled SALLIE. Brigance, BRIGANCE, and she can be reached once again at 214-789-1651. Round 3, appraisal. Now, if you want a detailed discussion about appraisal, go to episode 23 of the Rumble and listen to that. Jess and I unpack all things appraisal in that episode. What we're wanting to do is learn how to triage and understand when a claim is ripe for appraisal. Okay. And one of the things that I have learned is we don't want to weaponize appraisal. Do you know what I'm saying? And I see a lot of that done. I see a whole lot of people weaponizing appraisal. So we don't want that done. There are situations where, like Jess was explaining, the roof, I think it was in round 2 where you were talking about wind blown damage and all this kind of stuff. And they're saying there's no damage, and you may need a public adjuster to get that one shingle into coverage. And then once that one shingle is into coverage, then we can move it to appraisal. Now, and what I was going to say in the previous round is that if you're manipulating these things, I think the shingles are involved. If I have to touch a shingle, then the shingles are involved. If I am having to do anything with those shingles at whatsoever, and I'm talking like, move them so I can pull a nail, those shingles are affected by the manipulation of them and thereby should be in the appraisal. So that's one of the things that I think, but I see a lot of carriers often, they'll replace, turtle vents and rain caps and these kinds of things and trying to leave. And I believe it's on purpose. What do you think, Jess? Is that something that you
100% believe it's on purpose?
100%. Yep.
Especially when we're talking, especially like around the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I think, was it Waco that also got hit too this year pretty good? Dallas, God, I pulled a hail report for one, and the hail hit this house 4 times this year. 4 times. All 4 was over an inch. one was 2 inch, and the other was 3, and all the rest were like 1.5, something like that. I believe that the carrier, I have no real evidence, but just thinking through this, I believe a lot of the carrier rejections, especially towards the end of the year, they've said how much they're going to pay for some roofs. It got all sucked up by, a storm in the, first few months following the storm. Towards the end of the year, everybody that's coming out and saying that, they need a public adjuster, they're just saying, no, we're just paid for soft metals. That way they can say, I gave them something. They had some damage up there. I gave them something. You can't say that I'm a big bad wolf or I'm evil. Well, but you're not addressing the fact that this still got beat up with hail 4 times this year. Like, I get it.
One of my favorite is, well, it only had an inch hail, and that's not enough to damage the shingle.
But the other thing I think is I wonder if they're thinking to themselves, look, this is just the new norm for the Dallas-Fort Worth area. They're just going to get hit with multiple hailstorms every year. So what's the point in paying for one this year? They're going to get hit again next year. So we're just going to say no to everybody and see who just keeps pushing back. And everybody, they're eventually going to go away if we push hard enough. Or the onesie twosies that go to legal. So what? We've held on to our reserves and we've also reinvested a lot of money. We've made a lot of money. Blah blah blah. I don't know, but I try to think outside of just.
I could only assume that, Jess. I could only assume that because if we've got a strategy, you can damn sure bet they've got one too. And there's a lot of high-paid individuals sitting in rooms with long tables and making decisions on how they're going to process some of these claims. Right. And I can tell you that just about any roof north of 18 years old that's got full coverage on it is never going to be recognized as damaged. They're always going to say wear and tear is part of it. That's what they're always going to say. They're always going to say that. And I would encourage you. The reason that these things have to be in coverage and what I have seen some other carriers do, I have seen this where they approve 11 shingles. The appraisers meet due to a repairability issue. The appraisers issue an award for a full roof replacement. And then said carrier goes, all of those shingles, other than the 12 shingles that you saw, the other shingles are not in coverage. Right. And so you can't appraise these things that are in coverage. And the roofing. And so I've adjusted my appraisal demands just to be clear that if you're entering the appraisal process with us, we are looking at the roof system at large. And that is one of the things that I have done. And I just want to tell people this: when you've got a turtle vent, and they're replacing the soft metals and the chimney this and the flashing that and the turtle and the, these sorts of things, I would send in an appraisal demand. If you want to, you can send in an appraisal demand for the roofing system at large. The entire system has been compromised, and we want to look at the entire system from a repairability standpoint, from an access standpoint. We believe that it's going to be should be considered. And when you put that in writing and they agree to appraisal, then vacating that award becomes very difficult. Right. Very, very difficult. So I just want to throw this one thing out here about appraisal too, Jess, and I'm going to let you kind of talk about it as well. I also find appraisal very, very risky.
Agreed.
You know what I mean? Do you find it risky? I just find I'm very careful about the appraisals that I go into, because in the state of Texas, and not all states are like this, but and let me know about Louisiana, because I know you do a lot of work in Louisiana. Is appraisal binding in Louisiana? Because it certainly is in Texas.
No, I don't believe it is. I don't believe anything has changed to make it binding either. And the reason I answer that with hesitation is I haven't done any appraisals in Louisiana. When I've done appraisals, It's been in Texas. I just did a lot of hurricane claims as a PA in Louisiana. But no, I do not know. I don't know. You would have to. So one of the things you want to check in your appraisal laws, and you may be able to talk with an attorney about it.
is whether or not the appraisal is binding. Because if the appraisal is binding, that's it. The well's dried up. There ain't no going back. There isn't, oh, we realized that, the 30-year shingles are now 40-year shingles. Nope, sorry. That's not the way this is going to go. The appraisal is absolutely binding. And so there's no going back to the well. And if you don't put together a good report and win that umpire conversation, you're sunk. And so I'm very careful. I want to be really confident when going into an appraisal. I want to be pretty confident about what I think. I always set the expectations of my client. If I'm choosing to take something to appraisal, it's like, look, there's no guarantees here. And I need you to understand that.
Yeah.
There's no guarantees on what comes out here. And I let them know the risk going into it. And that's why we want to be pretty sure about appraisal. And so usually when I'm going into appraisal is we're not looking at the entire claim. And what I mean by that is what our entire claim of damage is. So I'm going to want to get something into coverage. And if I can't get anything into coverage, and let's talk about a roof, often what I will do is just kick it to an attorney at that point in time and let the attorney deal with the fact, because if it comes back and the appraisal is lost, there is still some things that attorney can challenge, sure, such as their breach of contract in general when they were looking at the preponderance of evidence that was submitted, which would be, again, a material misrepresentation of coverage. You know what I'm saying? And forcing them into an appraisal process. And I've seen carriers invoke appraisal, and alarm bells need to go off when a carrier is invoking appraisal. I'm just going to say, right, alarm bells, and it happens. It happens a lot. I have had carriers invoke appraisal on me, and alarm bells go off in my head because they're trying to hide something. Yep. That is their sneaky little way to basically get what's called an executed release on a claim.
Yep.
And that is, and so beware on appraisal. Understanding when it's right for appraisal is when they've basically opened up coverage for the thing that you're wanting, covered that they won't cover. I'm going to give you a really good example on our favorite, Jess, interior water loss. You ever had a situation where you have lower cabinets that are damaged and upper cabinets that are not damaged? Oh, yeah. And in my opinion, cabinets are bought as a set, and they like to estimate them as individual. How about that? I mean, those are things that I often appraise. What are some of the interior things that you get into on appraisal?
Like I said, I don't, most of my appraisals have been roofs. I really don't see too many water loss appraisals. Really? Because then the question, things like, because of that standard that exists on what should be replaced and how it gets replaced. I always take those. It's not as common. I always take those as PA claims, because those are the ones where if there's going to be any kind of, I don't want to say easy bad faith. There's no such thing as easy bad faith, but that requires a different level of competency. That requires some additional schooling and education and certification. So the fact that they send out adjusters that don't have any of that, and they're making, they're classifying water as clean water when it comes out of the HVAC through the insulation into the bathroom, onto the bathroom floor, that's clean water. Okay. I would really love to see you go ahead and pick up a cup of that and drink it. Here's my S500 manual. I'm pointing to it, and here's my certification. Can I see yours? Oh, I don't have one. Well, then we're not coming to the table as equally qualified individuals. You need somebody that's qualified to come out here, and
agreed. Absolutely, 100%
because I'm not spitting what I think this water is classified. No, it's in the manual. I have it. I read it. I'm certified in it. It's a governing document for the industry. You need to use it too. Here it is. I'm not making it up. It's word for word right here. And in the back, it actually has a material chart where if you go down to drywall, and it says category 1, what to do with that drywall. Category 2, what to do with that drywall. Category 3, I cannot believe some days we're still fighting as PAs that when water has sat, for a week because they're, let's say like Snowmageddon, for example, it was hard to get a water mitigation company out to homes because there weren't enough to go around. Like there were pipe bursts everywhere.
I know 3 weeks, houses sat wet for 3 weeks, and they were coming in and classifying them as class 1 water, class 1 category 1 water.
Or at the worst, maybe you'd see a class 2. It's like, no, it's right here. Here's the definition. Are you certified? No. Well, then you can't, so to speak, trump me on this because I am using the language right here. And like you said, it's a minimum standard, by the way. But I can't believe
It's
that
a
we still
minimum standard.
I still
right?
can't believe that even when water sat for 3 weeks or whatever before the water mic team could get out and do the demo and the mediation and all that good stuff, they still
That's
fight.
an appraisable thing. I think that's the point. Is that's an appraisable
Right.
thing? Is the category of water? Yeah,
And they would argue the 2-foot flood cut's not warranted. Just remove the baseboards. You are out of your mind.
Everything is 2 foot above the flood line. Everything that has been a standard forever is 2 foot above the flood line.
They still fight. 2-foot flood cut's not warranted. Just remove baseboards.
Man,
it should be should be appraisable because it's part of the water loss. It's just an improper scope of repair is not correct.
If you're suggesting that drying holes be drilled or remove the baseboards to address the drywall, because they're addressing they're addressing a repair to the drywall, right? Because it's wet and you're trying to change the condition or the function of the drywall. I have had carriers tell me that wet drywall after it dries gets stronger.
It does. Actually, the IICRC will tell you the same thing, but they said the problem is when drywall gets wet, even though it's harder, it still has a reduction in fire safety ratings. Your fire safety.
The point is so that I'm not using drywall for structural integrity.
Right.
I don't care how hard it gets. That's not the point and the function of drywall.
But yeah, they said
the strength of drywall is not the point. You know what I mean? And that was the one thing that I told the adjuster, never mind what the S500 says. I said, it's not a structural component. Whether or not it's stronger doesn't have anything to do with anything. And
the fact that it's compromised and could potentially have microbial growth in it is one. And second, it does alter your fire rating.
Well, yeah. And how many more times can it get wet?
So,
because right now it could get, I mean, if there is a number of times that drywall can get wet and survive, that just go with me here. If there is a number of times, so pick that number of times. Let's say it's 5. Drywall can get wet 5 times and it can be done again. In an insurance claim, now I have drywall that can only get wet 4 times. And before the loss, I had drywall that could get wet 5 times. So I have suffered a loss that you're not addressing. So if in fact it does get stronger, though I think that is an immaterial point because it's not a structural component. You know, so its strength is not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is its ability to continue to function in the role in which it was designed. That is absolutely appraisable. Final thoughts, Jess?
Well, and I think part of the whole argument on it's stronger is I believe back in the day, a lot of PAs would argue that for the baseboards to adhere back onto, for the new baseboards to go, be adhered to or fastened to the drywall. If the drywall was wet, then in their mind, the drywall is now compromised. It's not in its original state. And well, now the carriers are coming back and they're like, yo, but it's actually stronger. Well, okay. So I think that was probably where that whole argument stemmed from is, well, I got to put these brand new baseboards onto this drywall that was compromised. And it's not strong enough to take the new baseboards. And the carrier came back and said, actually, we found out it is stronger. So, but still, it's a moot point. It was compromised. There's potential microbial growth growing back there, and it messes with the fire rating. So there's still.
Well, and all of that matters. That is the point of drywall. That is the point of drywall. And it's like if the importance of drywall were for it to be stronger, they would wet that shit before it left the factory. Give me a break. Come on. Do you know what I mean? Like that is the most ridiculous thing. I mean, I'll do an hour and a half of eye rolls and hand waves on that one. It's like, oh, please. And it's sort of like, I remember back in the day, this was about 7 years ago, I was involved in an appraisal on, and it happened again on, after the Snowmageddon, the freeze of 2021 here in Texas, where there was the assertion from the carrier that they only paid for 3 days of drying because everything only takes 3 days.
Yep. And actually that
And
I don't mean to jump the gun before it's actually released.
you're going to steal my thunder is what you're going to do.
No, I was
Go
gonna
ahead.
say
It's all right. I'll let
there
you
was a subcommittee on the S500 rewrite, and that is exactly what they addressed. The fact that it is a myth that there is a 3-day drying time for every project.
Would anybody like to know where that came from?
Absolutely.
I would like to know where that came from.
Okay, so back to fun facts with the mouth. So here we go. That came from Paul Davis when they were trying to gather carrier support and get the business from the carriers on a direct assignment. Told the carrier that they would dry anything in 3 days or less, and if it took longer, they wouldn't charge for it. So the most that they were ever going to charge was for 3 days. And so over time, adjusters looked at it, and in the vicious game of telephone, Paul Davis doesn't charge us for anything more than 3 days.
Yep.
We shouldn't be charged for anything more than 3 days. We're not paying for anything more than 3 days. It only takes 3 days to dry a structure, and it came out of a marketing ploy from Paul Davis. And that is exactly where all of that idea that it can be dried in 3 days. And the game of telephone that I heard was on this side is that if it can't be dried in 3 days, then it shouldn't be attempted to be dried and we should cut it out. And so after 3 days, we should pull that up and cut it out. And that was the information that I got, which is ridiculous. Yeah. That is a ridiculous thing. And so when it comes down to what we can appraise and what we can't appraise, one of the things that you can look at is the time that it takes to dry, because you'll have a carrier go, shouldn't take longer than 3 days. Well, when did you show up with your moisture meter, Mr. Adjuster?
See your dry logs. It all goes off dry
where
logs.
are your drying logs?
You have to use dry logs to show.
Can you please point me to a chart in the S500 on moisture ratings you don't have, on how long it takes to dry a wall, on moisture ratings you don't know what they are? You have no idea what the saturation is on it, and you're telling me that it's going to only take 3 days? Well, you sat in the wrong classroom, bucko, and I'm going to tell you that is something that is most certainly appraisable, because it has to do with the amount of time the equipment needs to sit there and do its job. And guys, remember this: when you know they're wrong, that's usually when it's ripe for appraisal. When you've got the documentation to essentially put in front of an umpire, there you go. You know what I mean? And I just, in a couple of quick pitfalls that I want you to be careful of is if you've been named as an appraiser, I am going to encourage you to get the signed contract from the contractor that has drugged this thing into appraisal. And if it says for insurance proceeds plus supplements on it, do not take that to appraisal, because an opposing appraiser worth his salt said, it says right here for insurance proceeds. What are you complaining about? Contractually, there is grounds to stand on that has to be made available to the carrier. They can vacate the award on what the contractor and the homeowner have already agreed to. This is the price. You submitted the price. You let us pick the amount of money it is. We've picked it. And there you go. So you get insurance proceeds plus supplements. And if the supplement's not been approved, we go back to what? The proceeds. And you don't have anything to appraise. So before you send something into appraisal, update that contract, send that into the carrier, and then you can move into appraisal. Contingency contracts are dangerous going into appraisal. So remember that, guys. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed the show. That's all we've got for this week. If you've enjoyed it, please take some time to share it with somebody who desperately needs it. If you have questions or comments, always drop those down below. We do our best to get back to you with the answers that we may have. As always, it is a pleasure. We will be back next week. And in the meantime, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. And we will see you on the next one.
On the hammer, ready to ram you like the fire slammer jammer. Yes, we're coming up, don't even try to diminish it. I won't start it, but I damn sure will finish it.